Okay, it's time to get started. Thank you everyone for joining our lecture today. My name is Isaac and I'll be the lead instructor for the lecture. And today's topic will be Front-End Foundations Part 2. So what that means is this lecture will cover the second half of the Front-End Foundations curriculum. So if you're in that section, this is the lecture for you. A couple things to mention before we get started today. The first one being is that we're going to stop periodically throughout this lecture to open the floor for questions. So if you do have questions come up along the way, we just ask that you wait until those designated times to ask them. Another thing to mention is that we're recording this lecture. So once we're done here, we're going to be posting it on our YouTube channel. We're going to make that link available to you in your student resources. So diving right in, let's go ahead and discuss the topics we're going to be learning about today. Okay, and there's two primary technologies we're going to be focusing on, okay, and that is jQuery and Bootstrap. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off by navigating to the official document for jQuery, and that's at jQuery.com. Okay, and jQuery is simply a compressed, lightweight version of JavaScript, and it allows us to do things like manipulate our document and perform AJAX and much other stuff much easier than just our regular vanilla JavaScript approach, okay? And so as well as jQuery, we're gonna be learning about Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is a design framework which has HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all wrapped up into one. And it makes it to where we can create websites like the one we see here without really having to do any of the styling ourselves. We just have to place the page parts where we need them. And as you can imagine, that makes for a very fast and nice looking website design build. So now let's go ahead and let's set up a new document here, or how should I say it? A new project on our desktop here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's set that up on our desktop. Okay, so I'm going to make a directory called Front-End Foundations, and then I'm going to open that up inside of my text editor. Okay, give that a minute to boot up. Okay, excellent. So from here, in my root directory, I'm going to start off by creating an index.html document. Okay, and then in this document, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up an HTML skeleton. Okay, so we'll set up a head. Within the head, we'll put a title. We'll put Front-End Foundations. Okay, and then we'll throw a body. Just throw a header tag and say hello world. Okay, and then to test this out, we can go ahead and copy the path of the index document, and we can paste it right inside of our browser here. Okay, so as you can see, it renders this markup accordingly. Okay, so we know that document's working, no issues there. Okay, so now we need to bring in a script file so we can write our custom jQuery script. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create that right in my root. I'm going to call it app.js. Okay, then I'm just going to link it right here at the bottom of the body. Okay, and we'll just do a script source pointing to app.js. Okay, so we can save all now. Let's open up our console for the network. Okay, now we refresh. We can see it's loading in our document as well as our script. Okay, so from here we can install jQuery. Okay, so jQuery is just going to be a local installation, meaning we install it per the project. And I'm going to be using the Bower Package Manager to install it. Excuse me. So to use the Bower Package Manager, you'll need to install Bower on your machine. If you don't have it, you can go to you can go to bower.io and install it for free. And then once it's installed, we can start by initializing bower.json file right here in our root directory. And that way we can track all of our dependencies we install there. So I'm just going to use all the default settings, and it's going to import that directly here. And as I can see right now, it's just mainly metadata about my app. But now I can go ahead and run the command bower install jQuery -- save, and that's going to track it in my index dependencies. Okay, as we can see, jQuery has been installed. So from here, we need to link that within our document. Okay, so I'm going to reference our components, jQuery, distribution, and we're going to go for jQuery.min.js. Okay, and that's like the compressed version of the core library here. Okay, so let's go ahead and right above our custom script here, I'm going to put another script source pointing to the project path, which starts with our components and references it from there. Okay, so now we can go ahead and save all. And looking at our network here, when we refresh, we can see it's loading in the scripts for jQuery, as well as our custom script there. Okay, so now within our app.js, we can write our custom jQuery code. Okay, and like I said, jQuery is just a compressed version of JavaScript, right? So it basically allows us to do all the same things JavaScript does, however, in a much more lightweight approach through a series of built-in methods. Okay, so if we look at the jQuery docs here, we can see that everything boils down to these built-in methods, right? So we can use all these methods with the jQuery library to perform different operations, okay? And so what we're going to do is first, let's discuss the library sign, okay? And the library sign is a $sign, okay? So let's go ahead and let's console log that just so we can see that, you know, it's really a functioning library underneath there, okay? So the console here, we refresh, as we can see, it returns the $sign, okay? And so anytime we want to reference the jQuery library, we just use this $sign, okay? So that being said, I need to first start off by checking the document to make sure it's loaded in before we execute any jQuery, okay? And so to do this, we can go ahead and we can use our bling symbol, and I'm going to target the document, and then I'm going to use the ready method. And the ready method will fire a callback function, which time we could run a console log. And this console log could say, doc is ready. Okay, so from here we save all and we refresh. Okay, and as you can see, it waits a split second before the document loads in, and then it executes a callback function. Okay, and so this is where we can write our jQuery code. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off by talking about jQuery selectors. Okay, so whenever we want to target specific elements on our document here, we can target them by either groups or individual elements. Okay, so let's start off by learning how we can target like an individual element here just by itself, and maybe let's change the color of this element in the document. Okay, so to do this, we're going to add an ID, and we'll just call it greeting. Okay, and then we go to our app.js, and we can target that by setting up our jQuery selector like this. So we put a $sign, and then we use our hashtag to reference an ID, and then we reference the name of the ID, which we called greeting. Okay, so now we can go ahead and assign this to a variable. So let's go ahead and let's create a variable called greeting. And from here, we can go ahead and we can use it like a CSS method to change the color. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say greeting.css. Okay, then I'm just going to pass in a key value pair just like you would in regular CSS. So I will say color red, or there we go, red. Okay, and now when the document loads, it's going to assign the value of that element to greeting, and then we're going to be able to style the element color red. Okay, so let's save all, and let's refresh our browser. As we can see, when the document loads in, it executes this functionality. And nowhere in here do we have any CSS style sheets, right? The only thing that's styling this right now is our script. Okay, so just like we can target one individual element, we can also target groups of elements. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's put in another element here, and this will be like our farewell. So I'll say goodbye. Okay, and so what we could do is we could assign a class each of these, the same class. So we'll just go ahead and say page L. Okay, now both of these will have a page element class. Okay, so now we can go and we can target those. Okay, so we could say our page elements equals bling, and then we pass in a dot to target the class name, and then we call the class page L. Okay, so now we can say page elements.css, and we can change their color. So let's do color blue. Or blue, there we go. Okay, so save all, and refresh. Okay, and as you can see, it targets all the elements in the page L class and changes their color to blue. Okay, and so this is a very common use for jQuery, is to use it for things like page animations and manipulation of our document elements, because it's very efficient. In regular vanilla JavaScript, this would be a much less dry approach. Okay, so as you can see, everything just really references the jQuery library, and then we're just using a method off of that to perform a certain operation. In this case, we're manipulating the styles of an element. Okay, so next, let's go ahead and talk about jQuery events. Okay, so instead of always having to execute our jQuery script when the page loads, we can also set up functions to run our script by using jQuery event listeners. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's set up a simple input, which will input a greeting, and then we'll have a button to submit that greeting, and we'll console log it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say input with the type of text, and the placeholder will be our greeting. And then we'll set up a button, and this button will go ahead and we'll just have submit here. Okay, and we'll give both the ID, both the elements and ID. We'll start with the input, and we'll call it my input. Okay, and then for the button, we'll give it an ID, and we will call it my button. Okay, so now we have those set up. We can go to our app.js, and we can set up event listeners to whenever this button's clicked, it will take the value from this input and console log it. Okay, so let's start by declaring variables which will represent each of those element nodes. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my input equals document.get element by ID, and then the ID was my input. Okay, and then we'll do a similar approach with my button, and then we'll just swap out the ID for my button. Okay, so now, oops, here I go. I accidentally put old, vanilla JavaScript in there. Here we go. So as you can see, we're dramatically shortening things with jQuery, right? This is, selecting this element by its ID. Okay, and so now let's go ahead and set up the event listener for the button. Whenever it's clicked, we'll grab the value from the input. Okay, so we can say my button dot click, and then when the button's clicked, we can go ahead and we can run this callback function here, which will console log the value of my input dot val invoke. Okay, and val is a method which will extract the element's value and return it for our console log. Okay, so now we have our event listener set up. Let's go ahead and let's save all. Let's refresh our browser. Let's just put a greeting. We'll say hello world. We hit submit. We can see it takes the value from our input and displays it. Okay, so let's do that one more time. We'll say hey there, a different greeting, submit. And as you can see, very simple to manipulate the DOM, taking in inputs, outputting values, manipulating them. Very smooth with jQuery, and that's what it's known for. Is it's strong, front end ease of use. Okay, so let's see here. It's a pretty good introduction to jQuery. We'll leave you to kind of explore the rest of the library yourself, referencing the docs and just playing around with it and asking questions as needed. So that being said, let's open up the floor and let's see if anyone has any questions over what we've been over so far. Okay, so the floor is open. If you have questions, feel free to ask those now. Okay, so doesn't seem like anyone has any questions so far, so let's go ahead and let's continue to the topic of Bootstrap. Okay, so if you remember, we've discussed at the beginning that Bootstrap was a design library. Okay, so the idea was that you don't have to be a professional designer to make your website look like this, make it look really nice. Okay, you just use their pre-built components, install them into your project, and really you're good to go from there. Okay, so let's click on Getting Started. And as you can see, they provide us with CDNs, okay, and these are just external links to, third-party cloud sources. And so it's, really the same thing as us pointing to our own internal source, right, for the jQuery library, except with a CDN, we're going to point to a source in the cloud. But it's the same file, essentially. So I'm just going to copy. We'll start with the CSS here. I'm going to copy that. Because remember, the Bootstrap library comes in different parts, right? It has animations through JavaScript, it also has static styling through CSS. So we got to install a couple different things. And that will start with the CSS. So I'm just going to put the CSS right up here in the head, right? Like where I would normally put, my own custom CSS, right? Let's put that script there. And then we can hop down to the JavaScript. And as you can see, first thing they load in is jQuery, okay? And this is one example of jQuery being used in a professional project, okay? So the Bootstrap Foundation did not invent jQuery, right? They're using it because jQuery is really effective when it comes to specific, operations like page animations and design, okay? So that's the first thing you have to install because the Bootstrap library itself depends on jQuery. Okay, so that's why it's loaded in first. And then you'll notice Popper.js is loaded in second. And Popper.js is another library which Bootstrap relies on for certain animations. Okay, and then finally we load in the Bootstrap JavaScript library itself. Okay, so we'll just copy all those scripts. And I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of my current script for jQuery because I'll bring that in here in a minute. As we can see, it's right there now. Okay, so from here, we can go ahead and we can save all. and we can reference our project, select network, and refresh. Okay, and we can see that everything's loading in successfully. And you might notice too that automatically the style of our page changed, right? Not by much, but a little bit. Things automatically adjusted to the default browser styles of Bootstrap. Okay, so now we know that Bootstrap's loading in successfully. Let's go ahead and let's explore the uses behind this library. So first thing we're gonna focus our attention on is layout. Okay, so layout is ways that we can section our page into different parts, very much like a newspaper, right? So Bootstrap has an out-of-the-box solution for this called the grid. Okay, and so the grid is simply a 12-column system which breaks up the page into separate parts and then allows you to prefix different device sizes and make a very nice responsive site all around. Okay, so I'm simply going to take this first example here, and we'll just come to our index HTML. I'll get rid of my current elements here, and I'll just paste that in like so. Okay, so we can save all from here, and we can reference our browser document. And as we can see now, whenever we have the grid set up, it's putting our page into different sections. So let me copy this one more time. There we go. Okay, it's putting our page into different sections. Okay, and so this is the idea behind how we create content and how we place it in a website, right? We don't just, let everything float to the left in the top corner, right? That's the default browser behavior. That would look terrible. And that's why a lot of older websites did look terrible, because they didn't have a grid system to work with. So this is why we want to use one to make it look nice and professional and modern. So as well as being able to split into sections, we can also make it responsive. This goes back to what I was referencing a minute ago. We have these different device sizes which are determined by their width, right? And then depending on the width, we can change the size of our columns. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's grab a responsive example here. Here we go. So here we've got some medium mixed in with some small. So let's go ahead and let's save this. And we'll replace our current markup here with the new markup for the responsive grid. So we save all and we refresh. Okay, and as you can see, it splits everything into the 12-column grid. And from here, though, you'll notice that when I change the size of the screen, it's actually changing the size of the columns and responding to those. Okay, and as you'll notice, now things don't look so crammed, right, as they would if we just left everything as is and didn't make it responsive. Okay, and so because so much internet sites and applications are visited on mobile devices and tablets and desktops, right, it really varies. You want to really cover your bases with all of them by using a responsive grid system like this. Okay, and as you can see, Bootstrap really does 90% of the work for you. You really just have to go in, kind of adjust the grids to look how you want. But after a little amount of playing with it, it's pretty easy to use. So moving right along, let's go ahead and let's discuss Bootstrap components. Okay, so we'll click on components. And components are different parts of the web page. Things like a nav bar, link lists. So let's just start by going through alerts, right? So alerts are pretty self-explanatory. They just alert the user and let them know that they have a message, right? And as you can see, there's many different kinds of alerts we can use, and each alert is accompanied by some source code, right? And so we can simply just grab that code and paste in our browser to make it work. So let's just go ahead and let's do this first sample here and paste that right inside the body. And then we'll save all. And we'll go to Front-End Foundations, browser refresh. And as we can see, we get the same thing as shown in an example here, right? The only difference is they have a grid system set up for their page, right? And we don't at the moment. But at the end of the day, as you can see, very quick, we can, you know, build a website using this approach, because we don't have to go in and style all the padding and all the margin and the borders, and you know, we don't have to think about any of that. We just, you know, grab what we need, plug it in, and move on. Okay, so let's just take a moment to go through, you know, each of these components. So as you can see, a badge is very much just like, you know, for notifications, right? You see these oftentimes on sites like Facebook or, you know, Twitter, right? Like, you know, you have updates or stuff of that nature. And as you can see, you know, they got a good variety. So let's just go ahead and let's copy this bunch here and paste it in our browser. And let's see the end result. Okay, so we will save and refresh. And as we can see, we get the same result as we see in the example. Okay, as you notice, I'm not editing anything as far as styling goes. It just comes ready out of the box. Okay, so moving on, let's check out Breadcrumb. As you can see, this is just a way of keeping track of where you are as far as in the navigation of the program. And we got buttons. Obviously, these are very useful because, you know, buttons are a very common component to any web page. As you can see, they've got different colored buttons. They've got, you know, solid buttons, but they've also got, you know, nice outline ones. They've got large versus small versus block level. I mean, they really just cover all your bases. So let's just take a moment to maybe paste in these nice outline ones. See how those render in our browser. So take a moment to refresh our web page. As we can see, all of these buttons work out of the box, right? And they got a nice little animation, right? A hover, kind of fade in, fade out. Really, really nice and effective and not complicated at all to use. Okay, next we have button groups. And this is if we, you know, we don't want to separate our buttons, right? Maybe we want to list some data or something else, and this is where that would come in handy. So let's just take a moment to get this first one here and paste it in our browser. Okay, so from here, we will save and we will refresh. And as you can see, again, working right out of the box, nice and grouped together. We didn't have to really worry about any of that logic. We just used their pre-built solution. Next, we got cards, and this is just nice, you know, informational, you know, combination of, you know, images and words, oftentimes used for product descriptions, things of that nature, right? So let's just go ahead and let's take something like this, copy it to our browser. And as you can see, again, just nice and subtle, ready to go. Okay, so next let's check out a carousel. Okay, and you know, as you can see, this is pretty self-explanatory. It's just, you know, sends different images across this you know, this slide, and you know, can advertise products or whatever else we want to. Okay? So it's really depending on what you want, but they got, you know, all sorts of different options as far as how the slide behaves, you know, whether it goes left or right, or, you know, 3 seconds or 2 seconds between slides. I mean, they really let you get customized. So it's nice and simple. Next, we got collapse elements, which are, you know, if you're hiding certain information, you can, you know, display it really easy with, you know, these collapsibles. So let's just go ahead and take a moment to reference this in our browser. Okay, and we'll save. And we'll refresh. Okay, and as we can see, works right out of the box. Nothing to it. Next, we've got drop downs. Okay, and everyone knows what drop downs are. We've all seen these, right? They're great for menus, multiple selections, and you know, things to that nature. So let's go ahead and save all, and let's see this in action. So we refresh, and as we can see, we've got a nice drop down, ready to go. Move forward, forms. This is probably one of the nicest parts of Bootstrap because it's got so many different styles of forms. They really cover all bases. You know, they got drop downs, text areas, file uploads, different size form inputs, disabled forms, inline forms. Again, they just really, you know, cover your bases. So let's just take a moment to do a simple one like this email password, like login form. So I'll go ahead and copy that and paste it right on in. Okay, and now we just need to save, and we go to our browser and refresh. You can see that we got a nice form ready to go. No sweat off our back. Simple setup. Okay, so next we've got input groups. Okay, and oftentimes you would nest these in forms, right? But you know, maybe you want to have, you know, labels, right? Like you see here, or maybe different sizing, checkboxes, you know, buttons. Really, there's lots of different things that you may want. So they've really just kind of covered all your bases and presented pretty much all the options out there. So let's just go ahead and take a simple one like our first setup here. And we'll go ahead and we will copy that and paste it right on in. From here, let's go ahead and let's refresh our screen. As you can see, I've got nice input groups, right? And didn't have to really worry about how to get these next to each other and look all nice, really. They just set that up for me. Okay, so next we got a Jumbotron. Okay, and Jumbotron is really, you know, self-explanatory from what we see, right? It just helps you really emphasize a message or something to that nature, right? So let's just go ahead and throw that in here, and we'll go ahead and save, and refresh. As we can see, we got a nice emphasized message. Okay, next we got list groups. Okay, and list groups, as you can see, are really just, you know, these, you know, list of data separated with, you know, small little borders, right? So as you can see, there's different kinds of list groups. Some of them, you know, we can select items. Some of them are just really to convey information. So really it depends on your use case, but let's just go ahead and use this first simple one here to kind of see it in action. Okay, so we save all. And we refresh. And as you can see, we got a nice simple list group. Okay, next we have a modal. Okay, and modal combines, you know, some of our you know, script, how do you say it, script technology from, you know, Bootstrap.js here to set up a you know, animation. Okay, so if I click launch demo, as we can see here, we get the actual browser animation. Right, super smooth, creates a nice, you know, kind of semi-dark background here, so to focus all the attention. We got modal, got a simple title and message. We can explain some information, right? Okay, so next we have navs. Okay, and navs are pretty self-explanatory, right? They're just, you know, simple navigation links Maybe we have these, to list, different pages or different third-party resources. Really, I mean, kind of depends on what you need, but they really kind of, again, cover all your bases and just have everything kind of set up and ready to go for you in that regard. So, as well as navs, we also have nav bars. Okay, so we're all familiar with something like this, right? Where you go to a site and first thing you really see at the top is like a nav bar similar to here, right? So let's copy that into our editor and see that rendered in our browser. Okay. Okay. So save all. And refresh. As we can see, we've got a nice, simple nav bar, right? And we didn't have to really do any of that work. It just was ready to go for us. Not only do we have this nav bar, but we've got, a bunch of other ones that, allow us to set it up in different styles. Okay, so kind of depending on what you want, this is, your basic setup here. Okay. Next, we got pagination. And everyone kind of recognizes what this is, right? If you're paginating the results in your database, right, this is kind of your go-to here. Okay, so let's just copy this first one. And let's go ahead and put that right here in our editor. Save it. And refresh. As you can see, it's ready to go. Next, we got popovers. Okay, and this is where Popper.js comes into play, right? So as you can see, we got different messages that can be displayed, and really just nice animation for explaining what's going on with a specific part of directions or whatever else we need, right? And they really give you lots of options on customizing it too. Okay, so next we got progress bars. Okay, and these are pretty self-explanatory, right? You just use them to load in different, progress percentages as your program is, loading in different, different parts. Okay, and as you can see, we can even do live, animations to where it really adds, a lot of life for a program in that regard. Okay, next we got scroll spy. And really, that's just what you see here on the side, right? As we go down, this adjusts to the content being navigated through. Okay, and then finally we got tooltips, and this is similar to popovers, right? Except they're a little more lightweight. They're not for whole paragraphs or anything like that. They're just a little message, little indicator more than anything. And so just go ahead and copy those into our browser. And let's see them in action. All right, we save all, and we refresh. Okay, and as you can see, looks like, oh yeah, looks like I have to initialize the tooltip by adding this functionality inside of my script, and that way it knows to run the tooltip program. Okay, not the program, the tooltip style. Okay, so let's save that in our script here. Okay, refresh. Now you can see it's able to access that part of the library. Okay. And yeah, really, that's all the components. And as you see, all of them have the markup next to it. So really, it's just really pretty simple to figure out and really just set up how you want it, and it really kind of just works from there. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a moment to open the floor one last time, see if anyone has any questions before we wrap up. Okay, so the floor is open. Feel free to ask questions now. Okay, I'm assuming that is a no. Don't hear anyone, so if that's the case, thank you everyone for coming. Have a great rest of your day, and happy coding out there.